Welcome to my channel Limelight Leaks. Please share and subscribe, and hit the bell icon for latest updates. When Ant Anstead joined Wheeler Dealers in 2017, he wasn't just joining a TV show. He was stepping into something big. Ed China had left the show, and fans were really upset. The original two guys had great chemistry, good timing, and a way of doing things that worked. Now, Discovery needed to keep the show going, and Ant was the guy they picked to do it. At first, people on the internet were really doubtful. Who was this new guy? Could he fix cars like Ed? Could he work well with Mike Brewer the same way? But then something cool happened. Ant Anstead didn't just fill the job, he changed it. A former police officer who became a car builder, he brought with him an easy charm, deep knowledge about cars, and a personality that looked good on camera and clicked fast. He had a way of making hard car work look smooth. Where Ed was weird and technical, Ant was clean-cut and cared about how things looked. He didn't just fix cars, he made them better. Viewers slowly started to like him. Ant's workshop parts were detailed and full of passion. His design sense was fresh, and the cars looked better than ever. Brewer played his usual part, the deal maker, the host, the voice of the brand. But for the first time, fans noticed something weird. Ant was doing a lot more than just fixing cars. Behind the scenes, he was rebuilding engines, finding parts, and handling huge building jobs. The partnership felt a bit unfair. On camera, things looked smooth. But people who worked there say, from day one, Ant carried a heavier load than the show ever showed. And while the new pair won praise, pressure was already building behind the shop doors. On screen, Wheeler Dealers kept its classic rhythm. Mike Brewer hunted down the car. Ant brought it back to life. But behind the polished edits was a growing gap. While Mike's parts were filmed quickly, often in just a few hours, Ant spent days on the car work, engine rebuilds, transmission swaps, suspension fixes. Ant didn't just show steps. He did the entire job. And more often than not, alone. People who worked on the show later confirmed what fans had guessed. Mike's job was front-facing, hosting, making deals, moving the show along. Ant meanwhile was deep in the hard work. Late nights, hurt hands, solving problems when parts didn't fit. It was more than a show. It was a grind. And the unfairness started to show. There were small signs. In interviews, Ant would praise the crew, talk about his work, and barely mention Mike. In contrast, Mike remained the loudest voice in promotional stuff, going to fan events, doing press, and appearing alone on panel circuits. It wasn't personal. It was branding. Mike was Wheeler Dealers. Ant just another mechanic filling Ed's shoes. At least that's how some producers saw it. That unspoken ranking began to eat away at the chemistry. Ant didn't want fame. He wanted respect for the craft. But every episode he carried, every perfect restoration he pulled off just fed the machine. And Mike still took the spotlight. And when Ant looked around for credit, all he saw was silence. Even before Ant turned his first wrench on Wheeler Dealers, the comparison started. He's not Ed China. Bring Ed back. This new guy doesn't have the same soul. Every forum, every comment section, every YouTube clip came with an echo of Ed's legacy. Ed wasn't just a host, he was a replacement. And the fans made sure he never forgot it. That kind of pressure is invisible on TV, but it's heavy behind the curtain. Every creative choice Ant made, from interior materials to design tweaks, got picked apart online. Ed wouldn't have done this. Ed wouldn't have used that. But Ant wasn't trying to be Ed. He had his own style. More refined, more modern, more sleek. He built with an eye for design, often mixing form and function. Yet, despite the incredible work he was doing, he was trapped in someone else's shadow. It wasn't just about fandom. The tension leaked into production. Crew members were split. Some loved Ant's professionalism and new ideas. Others whispered that he didn't get what Wheeler Dealers was supposed to be. And through it all, Ant stayed professional. On camera, he smiled. He cracked jokes. He delivered results. But inside, the comparison was wearing thin. Even worse, Mike didn't do much to redirect it. He'd speak fondly of Ed in interviews, leaning on nostalgia while standing beside Ant. Whether intentional or not, it kept Ant in the role of replacement, never partner. And no matter how hard he worked, Ant knew this show would never truly be his. When Ed China announced his departure, Mike Brewer faced a backlash. Not criticism, outrage. Death threats flooded his inbox. Fans blamed him for forcing Ed out, even though the real reasons were complex and rooted in production disagreements. But it didn't matter. The mob had chosen a villain, and Mike was it. In the eye of that storm stood Ant Anstead. He wasn't the cause of the drama, but he became collateral damage, and tried to play peacemaker on Twitter. He publicly defended Mike, asking fans to calm down and give the new team a chance. But every post he made was met with venom. Traitor, sellout, fake. Fans weren't just mad, they were furious. Behind the scenes, the damage was real. Security was tightened. Tensions in production meetings were high. And Ant, who came in just wanting to build cars, found himself tangled in a public fight he never signed up for. The toll was emotional. Ant began limiting his social media. He stopped responding to fan comments. He withdrew, focusing on the builds and ignoring the noise. But the damage was already done. His trust in the process, and maybe even his friendship with Mike, was cracking. Worse still, some insiders claimed that Ant's public defense of Mike created private tension between them. The message was clear. Thanks for the loyalty. Now keep your head down and work. And that's when Ant started to ask himself, is this worth it? While the cameras rolled and the cars rolled out, something deeper was unraveling. Ant and Mike didn't share the same vision for wheeler dealers. At first, it seemed like a simple case of different styles. Ant came from a design-driven background, always pushing for sleeker lines, subtle upgrades, and modern innovation. Mike, on the other hand, was rooted in the old-school charm. Buy low, fix smart, sell fast. But as episodes progressed, it became clear. Their philosophies were clashing. Ant began pushing for projects that incorporated electric tech, sustainable builds, and creative redesigns. He wanted to modernize wheeler dealers to show that classic cars could evolve. Meanwhile, Mike stuck to the formula: nostalgia, resale, and quick appeal. To him, EVs didn't fit the brand. They weren't wheeler dealers' material. Episodes became a quiet tug-of-war. Ant would suggest a subtle update, an improved brake conversion, a new age instrument cluster, and Mike would brush it off or question the added cost. For viewers, it was just banter. But in the shop, it reflected something bigger. A show being pulled in two directions. Even producers felt the tension. Do they stick with Mike's tried and true method that had worked for over a decade, or lean into Ant's push for evolution and relevance? The result? Compromise on paper. But in reality, neither man felt like they were steering the ship anymore. And when a builder no longer has creative freedom, frustration turns into detachment. In late 2020, fans noticed something strange. Ant Anstead hadn't been on set. No promos, no teasers, and then the news quietly broke. Ant was out. Wheeler dealers had moved on, bringing in a new mechanic, Mark Elvis Priestley. Just like that, the Anstead era ended without a goodbye episode. No emotional send-off, no final restoration ride into the sunset. The announcement was cold. A press release here, a casual mention there. Mike Brewer thanked Ant vaguely on social media and immediately pivoted to the next chapter. Ant said little, if anything, no farewell tour, no recap video, just silence. For long-time viewers, the change felt jarring. Even Ed China had left with an open letter, a direct explanation, a moment of closure. With Ant, it was a clean break, quiet, professional, but unmistakably final. Rumors swirled. Had there been a falling out? Did Ant leave by choice, or was he pushed out? Some fans believed Ant simply couldn't deal with the backstage politics anymore. Others suspected producers wanted a reset, a return to simpler, less divisive days. But one thing was certain. The chemistry that once fueled the show had died long before the cameras stopped rolling. And the silence surrounding Ant's exit said more than any press statement ever could. After leaving Wheeler Dealers, Ant Anstead didn't launch into interviews. He didn't take jabs. He didn't hint at drama. Instead, he went silent and stayed silent. No public words about Mike Brewer, no references to the show. Even in appearances and podcasts, Ant carefully sidestepped the topic. And that silence, it spoke volumes. Sources close to production say Ant had grown disillusioned, not just with the workload, but with the environment. It wasn't just the creative tension or the internet backlash. It was the feeling that he was replaceable, that no matter how good the work, the brand would roll forward without him. No credits, no legacy, just another mechanic on the conveyor belt of TV. The personal connection between Ant and Mike gone. The two haven't been spotted together since the show. No guest episodes, no reunions, no birthday posts, or mutual shout-outs. And while Mike occasionally references past co-hosts, Ant's name rarely, if ever, comes up. It's a professional ghosting, clean, quiet, intentional. Ant poured years into that garage trying to honor the craft on screen. And when he left, he didn't ask for applause. He just walked away. And if you're wondering whether he'll ever go back, the silence says it all. Over the next few years, Ant Anstead gave interviews. He promoted new projects, spoke about design philosophy, and even shared personal updates. But when it came to Wheeler Dealers, specifically Mike Brewer, his answers got vague, polished, strategic. When asked directly, he'd say things like, "It was a great experience. I learned a lot from my time there. The team was incredible." But never once did he say Mike's name. In the world of television, what you don't say matters more than what you do. Ant wasn't bitter, at least not publicly. But those who followed closely noticed the pattern. In podcasts, when hosts brought up the show, Ant would redirect to talk about craftsmanship or the builds, not the people. When asked about co-host dynamics, he'd pivot to creative differences or growth. It was cordial, but cold. Meanwhile, Mike Brewer continued on Wheeler Dealers with a new partner, acting as if Ant's chapter was a footnote. No flashbacks, no tributes, no clips from their episodes together. Fans noticed, questions piled up. Was there bad blood? Ant never confirmed it. But in an industry where silence is rare, his consistent, intentional omissions painted a clear picture. The door wasn't just closed, it was sealed shut. Because sometimes the cleanest cuts leave no scar, just a silence that says, "We're done." Post-Wheeler Dealers, Ant Anstead didn't fade into the background. He reinvented himself on his own terms. First came Radford Returns, a bold revival of the legendary coach building company. It was everything Wheeler Dealers wasn't. Modern, ambitious, and deeply rooted in performance design. Ant wasn't fixing tired, old engines anymore. He was designing custom supercars for elite clients, collaborating with names like Jensen Button, and working in high-end garages filled with carbon fiber, not rust. The shift was massive, but intentional. Then came his own ventures, custom builds, restoration projects, and televised specials that focused less on flipping and more on feeling. Ant leaned into storytelling, design, personal connection, and the best part, he was no longer the second man on a show. He was the lead. Interviews now focused on his process, his voice, his values, and every move made it clear he wasn't interested in revisiting the past, especially not the chapter with Mike Brewer. There were no grudges aired, but there was also no room left for the old format. Ant was building again, not just cars, but a future without limits. And in that future, there's no room for a co-host holding the wheel. To this day, fans ask the question, will Ant Anstead ever return to Wheeler Dealers? The short answer, no. The long answer, he doesn't need to. Those close to the production say the relationship between Ant and Mike is cordial but distant. No bad-mouthing, no legal fallout, just two professionals who no longer see the road the same way. Brewer remains the face of the show, rolling out projects with Elvis Presley, keeping the formula alive. But something's missing, and longtime fans feel it. Ant, meanwhile, has evolved far past the format. He's hosting high-end build series, working with F1 champions, and raising the bar for what car TV can be. He isn't the garage guy anymore. He's an entrepreneur, a designer, a storyteller, and behind the scenes, insiders say Ant has quietly turned down any offers related to Wheeler Dealers. He's not interested in a guest episode, not a reunion, not even a flashback special. Whatever happened off camera between him and Brewer, whether it was creative burnout, a lack of credit, or personal distance, It's enough to make sure that door stays closed. Because sometimes silence isn't anger, it's clarity. And for Ant Anstead, the message is simple. He's never going back.